My name is Cassidy, and for 29 years I was the girl who kept the engines running, while my brother was the only one allowed to sit in the captain's chair. In my family, the Whitfords of the Hudson Valley, there was a very specific, very rigid ecosystem. At the top of the food chain was my father, Silas, a man who viewed his children as assets on a balance sheet. Then there was my mother, Diane, whose entire personality was built on the foundation of being the right kind of people. And then there was Jackson, my older brother, the visionary, the golden boy, the man who could lose $10 million of other people's money and still be called a genius in transition. And me, I was the useful one. I was the one who graduated from design school, and instead of opening a flashy gallery in Soho like Jackson wanted, I moved back home to restore the family's crumbling estate. I was the one who knew which pipes leaked, which contractors were overcharging us, and exactly how many pills Grammy June needed to take with her morning tea. I was the daughter who was so lucky to be part of the Whitford legacy, even if that legacy felt more like a cage. But 3 weeks ago, my parents did something so cold, so calculated, that it didn't just break the cage, it set the whole house on fire. They sold the Midnight Star. It's a black diamond brooch, roughly the size of a pigeon's egg, surrounded by a halo of white baguettes. It was the only thing my grandmother, June, truly loved. She had told me, since I was a little girl sitting on her vanity stool, that it would be mine. She called it my get-out-of-jail-free card. They sold it for $140,000 to cover the legal fees for Jackson's latest venture, a crypto trading platform that had vanished into thin air along with the life savings of half the town. They thought Grammy June was too far gone, tucked away in that high-end hospice facility, to ever miss it. They thought I was too quiet, too loyal, to ever raise my voice. They thought I would just keep fixing the leaks and painting the walls while they stripped the house bare to save their precious son. They were wrong. When I finally sat by Grammy's bed and told her what they'd done, the room went dead silent. She didn't cry. She didn't even look shocked. She just looked at me, with those sharp hazel eyes that could still see right through a person's soul, and she reached for her vintage leather handbag. She pulled out a small encrypted burner phone I didn't even know she had, dialed one number, and said exactly 10 words. "The hawk has left the nest, Charles. Release the hounds." Before I tell you about the absolute, glorious carnage that unfolded at the Hudson Valley Heritage Gala, let me take you back to where the rot first started to show. It was a Tuesday in late November, the kind of day where the sky looks like wet concrete and the wind off the river smells like old wood and cold rain. My father's voice came over the intercom in my workshop, a converted carriage house where I spent my days stripping layers of lead paint off 19th century doors. "Cassidy, main house, now, we have a family matter to discuss." I wiped my hands on my apron, feeling that familiar, heavy knot of dread in my stomach. When I walked into the drawing room, the air was thick with the smell of my mother's expensive perfume and the sharp metallic tang of my father's stress. My mother was sitting on the edge of a velvet settee, looking like she was practicing for a funeral. My father was pacing the Persian rug, his face a map of red lines and broken capillaries. And there was Jackson, leaning against the mantel, wearing a $4,000 suit, and looking at his reflection in the mirror like he was the lead in a movie no one else was watching. "Your grandmother's care is becoming prohibitively expensive," my father began, not looking me in the eye. "The facility in Terrytown, the private nursing, it's a drain on the estate's liquidity." "Dad, she's 89, I said, my voice sounding small in the high-ceilinged room. "She worked 60 years to build this estate. She deserves the best care." "We all agree, Cassidy," my mother chimed in, her voice like sugar-coated glass. "But we have to be practical. Jackson is at a very delicate stage with the Apex Global rollout. If he succeeds, the family's fortune is secured for generations. But he needs bridge financing." I looked at Jackson. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He just shrugged. "It's a liquidity event, sis. High stakes, high reward. You wouldn't understand the nuances of venture capital." "I understand that you've lost every dime Dad has ever given you," I snapped. "Enough," my father barked. "We've made a decision. We've moved the Midnight Star. It's been appraised, and a private collector in Zurich has already wired the funds. $140,000. It covers the next year of your grandmother's care and gives Jackson the runway he needs. I felt the world tilt. You moved it? You mean you sold it? Dad, that was Grammy's heart. She promised it to me. You told me that was my inheritance because I've spent my entire life working on this house for free. Inheritance is a privilege, Cassidy, not a right, my mother said, smoothing her skirt. Besides, what would you do with a black diamond? You spend all day in work boots and denim. It would just sit in a safe. Jackson is using it to build something meaningful. It was hers, I whispered. And she's still alive. You stole from your own mother. We are her legal guardians, Cassidy, my father said, his voice dropping into that low, terrifying rumble. And if you ever want to see a dime from this estate, if you ever want to keep living in that carriage house, you will keep your mouth shut. Do you understand me? You will go to the hospice tomorrow, you will smile, you will tell her she looks lovely, and you will not mention the brooch. If she asks, tell her it's at the jeweler's being cleaned. I walked out of that house feeling like I had been punched in the chest. I went back to my workshop, sat on the floor among the sawdust and the old tools, and I cried. I cried for the girl who had spent every weekend of her 20s sanding floors while her brother was in Ibiza. I cried for the daughter who had stayed up all night doing the family's taxes while her parents were at the opera. But mostly, I cried because I realized that to them, I wasn't a person. I was just part of the maintenance. The next morning, I drove to the hospice. I brought a bouquet of peonies, Grammy's favorite. When I walked into her room, she was looking out the window at the river. She looked fragile, her skin like tissue paper, but her eyes, they were as sharp as ever. You're a terrible liar, Cassidy, she said, before I could even say hello. What? I haven't even said anything yet, Grammy. You have that look, the look your grandfather used to get when he was trying to hide a dent in the fender of his Cadillac. What did they do? What did Silas and that woman do? I sat down, took her hand, and for the first time in my life, I didn't protect them. I told her everything. I told her about the Zurich collector. I told her about the $140,000. I told her about Jackson's Apex Global and the bridge financing. I expected her to be devastated. I expected her to fade into the pillows and give up. Instead, she started to laugh. A thin, dry, wheezing laugh that turned into a cough. 140,000? She wheezed. That's what they got for it? Grammy, I'm so sorry, I said, tears starting to sting my eyes. Oh, don't be sorry, darling, she said, her grip on my hand tightening until it almost hurt. Be proud, because your father is an even bigger fool than I thought. That brooch, the one in the safe, was a high-grade cubic zirconia. I had it swapped out 20 years ago, the first time your father tried to borrow from my private accounts. I stared at her, my jaw dropping. You had a fake? Of course I did, she said, a wicked glint in her eyes. I know who I raised, Cassidy. The real Midnight Star, the one worth nearly $3 million, has been sitting in a safety deposit box in a small bank in Vermont for 2 decades, along with something else, something much more dangerous. She reached for her bag then. She made the call. She said those 10 words. The hawk has left the nest, Charles. Release the hounds. Who is Charles? I asked, my heart hammering. My real lawyer, she whispered. Not that corporate shark your father uses. Charles has been waiting for this day for a long time. Now listen to me carefully, Cassidy. There is a gala on Friday night, the Hudson Valley Heritage Gala. Your father is the keynote speaker. He's going to announce his legacy gift to the community. You are going to go. You are going to wear the most beautiful dress you can find. And you are going to take this. She handed me a small silver thumb drive. What's on this? The truth, she said, and the end of the Whitford name as the world knows it. Are you ready to stop being the girl who fixes things, Cassidy? Are you ready to be the girl who breaks them? I looked at her. I thought about the carriage house. I thought about the black diamond. I thought about the way my mother couldn't even remember my name when she was talking to her friends. Yes, I said, I am. Friday night arrived with a cold, biting wind. The gala was held at the historic estate of the Van Alstyne family, a massive, Gothic revival mansion that looked like something out of a Bronte novel. My parents were in their glory. My father was wearing a custom tuxedo, looking every bit the patriarch of the valley. My mother was draped in emeralds, her hair piled high, preening for the photographers. Jackson was there too, holding a glass of vintage champagne and talking loudly about disrupting the financial sector. I walked in late. I was wearing a floor-length, backless dress in a deep midnight blue. I had spent $600 on it, money I had been saving for a new table saw. I had my hair up, and for the first time in my life, I was wearing a bold red lipstick. My mother saw me first. She nearly choked on her hors d'oeuvre. "Cassidy? What on earth? You look so loud," she hissed, pulling me aside. "And where is your name tag? You're supposed to be helping with the silent auction." "I'm not helping tonight, Mom," I said, smiling at her. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "I'm a guest." "Don't be ridiculous," my father said, joining us. "You're making a scene. Go to the back and make sure the caterers have the vegan options ready. Now." "No," I said. "I think I'll stay right here. I wouldn't want to miss your speech, Dad. I hear it's going to be unforgettable." The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The master of ceremonies, a man with a voice like velvet and old money, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a family that has been a pillar of our community for over a century. A family that understands the meaning of legacy. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Silas Whitford." The room erupted in applause. My father puffed out his chest and walked onto the stage, looking like a king. He started his speech, the same speech he'd given 100 times, a speech about tradition, honor, and passing the torch to the next generation. Behind him, a large projector screen was supposed to be showing a slideshow of the Whitford estate through the years. It started with black and white photos of my great-grandfather, then my grandfather, and then the images changed. It wasn't a photo of the house. It was a scan of a document. A bank transfer from a private account in Zurich to an offshore shell company owned by Jackson Whitford. The room went quiet. My father didn't notice at first. He was still talking about integrity. Then the next slide appeared. It was a transcript of a recorded phone call. "Silas. Just sell the damn thing, Diane. The old woman doesn't know what day it is. 140 will keep the feds off Jackson's back for another month." Diane. "But what if Cassidy finds out? She's obsessed with that brooch." Silas. "Cassidy is a glorified carpenter. She'll do what she's told. She's too scared to lose her little workshop to ever say a word." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. My father froze. He turned around, his face going a sickly, mottled gray as he saw his own words projected 20 feet high for the entire social elite of New York to see. "What is this?" he stammered. This is a prank, a deep fake." But it didn't stop. The next slide was a series of emails. Emails between my father and a consultant regarding the systematic stripping of Grammy June's trust fund over the last 5 years. Millions of dollars, gone. Funneled into Jackson's failed businesses, my mother's jewelry, and my father's investments. And then, the final blow. A video message. It was Grammy June. She was sitting in her hospice bed, looking directly into the camera. She looked strong. She looked like the woman who had built an empire. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice clear and resonant through the speakers. "If you are seeing this, it means my son has finally proven himself to be the man I always feared he was. A thief, a liar, and a coward." The silence in the room was so thick you could taste it. "I have spent the last 48 hours with my attorney, Charles Sterling," Grammy continued, "and I have made a few changes. First, as of this moment, Silas and Diane Whitford are removed as executors of my estate. Their guardianship is revoked. Second, I have provided the district attorney with a full accounting of the creative bookkeeping Silas has used to maintain this family's lifestyle." She paused, and for a second, she looked like she was looking right at me. "And finally, to my granddaughter Cassidy, the only person in that house who ever knew the value of hard work, and the only person who ever truly loved me, Cassidy, the real Midnight Star is yours, along with the deed to the Hudson Valley estate. Silas, Diane, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises. I suggest you start packing. Jackson, I'd suggest you find a very good lawyer. You're going to need one. The screen went black. For 5 seconds, you could have heard a heartbeat across the room. And then, the whispering started. It was like a wave, growing louder and louder. My father looked like he was melting. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. My mother was clutching her pearls so hard they snapped, the emeralds scattering across the floor like green teeth. Jackson tried to run for the side exit, but two men in suits, men I recognized as being from the DA's office, were already blocking his path. I stood in the center of the room, my head held high, my red lipstick standing out like a badge of honor. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. I walked out of that ballroom, the sound of my heels clicking against the marble sounding like a drum roll. The fallout was spectacular. The Zurich collector turned out to be an undercover investigator working with Charles. My father's Man of the Year award was rescinded before the night was even over. Within a week, the news was everywhere. The fall of the House of Whitford. My parents tried to come to the carriage house. They tried to bargain. They tried to tell me that we were a family. Family doesn't steal from their dying mother to save a son who doesn't care if they sink or swim, I told them, standing in the doorway of the house I now officially owned. Family doesn't treat their daughter like a piece of the furniture. You wanted the Whitford legacy? Well, here it is. This is what you built. I gave them exactly 48 hours. I watched from the window as they loaded their designer suitcases into a rental car. My father looked 10 years older. My mother looked like she had finally realized that the right kind of people don't want anything to do with a woman who steals from a hospice bed. And Jackson? Jackson is currently waiting for his trial date. The Apex Global collapse turned out to be a massive Ponzi scheme. He's looking at 15 to 20 years. Grammy June passed away 2 weeks after the gala. She went peacefully, with the windows open so she could hear the river. Her last words to me were, "Don't just fix the house, Cassidy. Live in it." I didn't sell the estate, and I didn't sell the Midnight Star. I kept it all. I turned the main house into a retreat for women in the trades, a place where carpenters, designers, and builders can come to learn and create without being told they wouldn't understand the nuances. I still live in the carriage house. I like the way the sun hits the floor in the morning. I like the smell of the sawdust. But now, when I walk into the main house, it doesn't feel like a museum of someone else's success. It feels like mine. Sometimes I take the Midnight Star out of its velvet box. I look at that black diamond, dark, beautiful, and impossible to break. And I remember that silence isn't always a sign of weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of a woman waiting for the right moment to change the world.